Diaz is a family-owned company. Started in 1980, but actually before 1980, it was my father's family opened grocery stores here in Midtown, and we had one of the very first Hispanic stores in Atlanta that catered to the local community, but as well brought Hispanic products from Miami to service the Hispanic community here in Atlanta. Then in 1980, my father had the idea of renting a small warehouse so that we can service other stores in the Georgia area. Well, anyway, fast forward that 32 years, and we went from a first 1980 sales of $100,000 to almost to $200 million between all the companies this coming year.
From a logistical perspective, how do you continue to grow while remaining profitable?
It's hard. Today's world with fuel going up to $4 a gallon. We have not necessarily reinvented ourselves, but we have really looked at who we are, what drives our profit. I challenged our sales staff and management staff about 4 years ago and asked them, what do we do? And a lot of people said, well, we're food distributors. No. And others said, well, we're Hispanic marketers. No. Oh, we're Hispanic food marketers. No. What we are is basically a logistics company. Our job is to buy product and bring it from point A and bring it to this distribution center the most efficient and inexpensive way. Then once it's here, our job is to warehouse it and have the minimum amount of inventory for the highest fill-in ratio possible, okay? And get those turns moving as quickly as possible, get it out the door, all right, in the most efficient manner, and then load them into a truck and then ship them in our trucks in the most efficient route. And then we measure each route on a profitability scale so that each route that goes out the door is maximizing not just weight, but as well profitability. In other words, we may ship a truckload of one product at 12% gross margins, but we're going to lose money on that route. But then send another route that has a mixed load, and you may have products at 12%, others at 40%, others at 30%, others at 20%, but then you end up with a 22% blended average, and then you make money on that route. So it was understanding and getting our managers to understand really what we do, which is the movement of product in the most efficient and most profitable way.
How do you deal with fluctuations in terms of cost to you? So say gas prices.
Yeah, gas prices we just end up absorbing. We can't change our pricing based on fuel. We would be literally changing our prices daily. So you can't do that to our customers. The only prices that we can change are the cost of goods. So if we're buying, let's say, a commodity, let's say like rice, and rice starts going up, so when it comes in, we go up. And then when it goes down, we go down. The spread between our cost and our selling point, that's what we try to manage. So if we do have large increases in fuel, then what we try to do there is we try to manage that. And if we feel that we have to go up, we will. But we watch the market very closely, and if, even though it may spike, you hope that's going to drop the next day, so we may not react. But again, it's very tough. I mean, what I call the old economy or the old world, the old way of doing things, which is 5 years ago, fuel didn't fluctuate as much. So it was steady. You didn't have to worry about it. But now with these huge swings of $20, you go from $65 a barrel to $115 a barrel because of an issue in the Middle East, and your fuel costs double. And we go through 25,000 gallons of diesel fuel a week here. So a 50-cent increase at the pumps for us is equal to about $11,000, $12,000 of added expense that we have to absorb, or $500,000 a year.
How has the economic downturn of the last few years affected your company?
It affects us a little bit, not a lot. We're used to about 20-25% growth. So the last 4 years, we've grown anywhere between a low of 4% to a high of about 9%. So it's the first time in our history in 32 years that we've had single-digit growth last more than 1 year. Until this last recession, we had only experienced single-digit growth only twice in our entire history. It's always been double-digit. In fact, during recessions, we actually came out of each recession stronger and with more growth than going into a recession. This time it was a little different for us. It was what we called it internally a perfect storm. You had a recession going on, but you also had deflationary pricing. So that means you're moving the same amount of cases, let's say, out the door, but at a lower selling price. And we don't mark up on cases, we mark up on selling price. So then you generate less profit. The third thing was fuel. Fuel went up. Well, we're in the transportation business. So when fuel goes up from, the barrel goes up from $50 a barrel, or right around Katrina, to a high of 140, I think it was $149 a barrel, and your fuel costs triple, and you have to absorb it, it takes a toll on us. So that was the third one. The fourth was very unique to us, which a lot of companies in Georgia didn't feel, but we felt was the immigration issue. And and I need to say this because I am for controlling our borders, about accountability, about making sure that we know who's in this country, and so forth. We are E-Verified as a company. We're an E-Verified company. We volunteered to be an E-Verified company before it was mandated. In fact, for our size company, we still are not required to do it, and we've been doing it already. We do I-9 audits. We've been, again, self-imposed. It's not a regulatory issue. We do it ourselves to make sure that within the laws of the United States. But with that said, with the immigration law that was passed in Georgia, and I understand for the why the reasons were done and so forth. There were a lot of right reasons, but it still has a negative impact on our economy, bottom line. I mean, you can't argue that point. And look at the farmers in South Georgia when they didn't have workers to help them with their crops last summer, and the amount of money they lost. In our case, what happened was there were a lot of people that lost jobs because even though they were documented or American citizens or residents of this country, the companies they were working for were hurt because of the recession and the immigration issue. So they left the state of Georgia and went to other states. So we saw our sales in Georgia. In fact, Georgia has always been our #1 market for 31 years until last year. Georgia fell from 1 to 2nd, and the Carolinas became our 2nd largest market in our footprint, and which is huge because obviously it is less expensive for us to deliver in Atlanta or in Georgia than it is to deliver in the Carolinas. So, Georgia right now is #2, and Tennessee is coming up really fast to take over that #2 spot and pushing Georgia the 3rd. So we measured our economic impact here, how it had hurt us. We lost, I think Georgia lost several 100,000 Latinos, which consume, gasoline, buy our used cars, shop at Walmart, at Target, eat at McDonald's, drink Coca-Cola, consume products that we all make here we make or we sell or distribute it in the state of Georgia. So when they left, we saw our sales drop almost 30% in the state of Georgia. Now, because of our footprint that's large enough, we were able to capture that same consumer when he left Georgia and, let's say, went to North Carolina, went to Louisiana. That same consumer, since we had outlets there and we could distribute to chain stores like in the Carolinas, we sell to Food Line. So when that consumer left Georgia and stopped shopping at Kroger in Atlanta, he's now shopping, or she is now shopping at Food Line, North Carolina. We service Food Line in the Carolinas. So we were able to capture some of those consumers because they ended up going to states that we service as well as to customers that we service in those states, which is why the Carolinas, Georgia's loss was the Carolinas' gain, basically. It wasn't dollar for dollar, but a good percentage of move over to the Carolinas. So for us, it was a perfect storm between the recession, deflationary pricing, fuel, and then the immigration issue.
In the midst of this perfect storm with the economy, how has your company come out of that?
I think much leaner. In fact, in the last 4 recessions, we've come out of them much, much leaner. This one, though, we had to really focus on efficiencies. So everything we've done in the last 36 months to 48 months has been efficiency driven. So we've actually employed more people and created more positions with the company. So we have not downsized as far as personnel. We've actually added. Now the jobs we added were a little bit different. We added more people in our business intelligence department. So we now have a business intelligence department with, I think, up to 8 people, 7 or 8 people in the department. 4 years ago, there were 2. So we've added more people to that so they can analyze the data and look at where we can become more efficient. In other words, do the same work, same everything, nothing changes. I think what makes us a little bit different is, compared to other food distributors in the U.S., is the way we go to market. Very, very different. We use a different sales technique than the average distributor or food distributor does. So very, very different. We're very attuned. Obviously everyone's attuned with their customers. We're attuned with our customers' culture, which is very, very different. And it's not necessarily their culture from their country as their business culture, which a lot of companies don't understand. Meaning how you treat a very small independent customer, or well, not treat them, but their needs are very, very different than the needs of a larger account. So how do you work with a small independent, very small independent mom and pop operator? I mean, I'll give you an example. If we get a bad NSF check from a mom and pop store, I'm not worried. I get a return check from a large institution, it concerns me. And that's the culture that I'm talking about, because mom and pop stores, typically it's mom and dad and 3 kids. Mom has to or dad has to go to the bank, get the deposit before 2. Teacher calls from school, sir, ma'am, your daughter's sick. They have to make a decision, pick up the sick child or get to the bank before 2. Obviously you choose to pick up your sick child. You don't make the bank before 2. Next day, since you're such a small account, not enough funds in your account, checks bounce or returned. Okay. In a big institution, you have huge, large, you have pretty decent lines of credit. Meaning that if a check is returned, there must be something really, really bad going on. So understanding that culture is what I'm talking about, the business culture. And we're very attuned to the business culture, the type, and we have customers from independent one type units to regional chains, national chains, and huge corporate accounts like the Food Lions of the world and so forth. So, and each one has a different culture. So I think it's more attuned to that culture. I think that makes us different. The other part is just our people. Like I tell people, don't come here to work, come here to have fun. Because the minute it becomes work, you become less productive for me. Enjoy what you're doing. If you enjoy what you're doing, it's no longer work. You wake up every morning wanting to come to the office.
One last question I just kind of want to ask you about your involvement within the sort of Latino community here in Atlanta. How engaged are you in your company?
We're very much involved in the community, but it's not just the Latino community. We're involved in the overall, just in the community. In fact, we're involved in more nonprofits that are not Latino. There are only 3 Latino nonprofits that we're involved with, but we support over 30 other nonprofits. But we feel that it's our corporate responsibility. I use the word corporate responsibility. It's our human responsibility as a citizen of this country and of this world to give back. We're very, very fortunate. I mean, as my family we came here with nothing to this country, and to have the ability to give back, the opportunity to give back that this country gave us, I think it's something that we have to do. It's not a requirement of our officers, but we encourage people to volunteer. If they do volunteer, then we support them with any monetary help they need in the form of gifts to these nonprofits and so forth. So, for example, our CFO for years and volunteers with Camp Sunshine. So we give him he gets a week of pay so he can go and do his volunteer work. And we support him in anything he needs for Camp Sunshine. I sit on about 9 nonprofit boards. My wife, Barbara, sits on about 9 nonprofit boards as well. And it's just, what we need to do. And you know what? I actually enjoy it. Sometimes it's like, you're like, you have to go to work, whatever, but so you're like, man, I have another meeting. But once you get there, it's very rewarding. Sometimes I feel ashamed because I feel I get more out of it than I give, because it's so rewarding. You go in there and you see how you're helping people. So it's almost selfish, but I enjoy it. I think it's made me a better person and get involved in the community. And the other part, it allows me to engage with other people from other industries, and it just broadens my horizons. And I think I've grown as a person because of that. So it's very, very important, at least for me personally, and also for the company to be very much involved and let the community, the Atlanta community or the Georgia community know that we are part of, this state, this wonderful state and this beautiful city, and that we support them.